Christian?
Ready when you are.
All right. So we spoke yesterday about the Eish Yud. Remember this? The fire that's called the Yud is as opposed to the fire that's called the Hay. And we said that what is the fire that's called the Yud? Ultimately, it's the Orein Sof that precedes the Tzimtzum. And even though this Orein Sof that precedes the Tzimtzum is completely above the worlds and has nothing to do with the world, it's not even makif to the worlds. Remember that phrase, makif to the worlds? In other words, there's two lights that come into the worlds, Penimius and makif. Inner light and light that's beyond them. But this light is even beyond that. And the idea is that if it has nothing to do with the world, how can you really attain it in the world? Because we're dealing with this idea of reaching this level of penimius love, where you sort of attain that light. If it's completely beyond the world, how do you attain it? So the idea is that even though it's beyond the worlds, all the worlds are taking place sort of inside of it. In other words, it's really permeates everything. It's just so beyond everything that nothing can grasp it. But if you'll nullify yourself to such an extent, then it is in fact there. And all the worlds sort of are a projection of it. We said there's the idea of Antu chad v'lo b'chushban. You are one without a knowable count. So everything that's in the realm of the worlds is is countable. It's a thing. And this oneness is beyond all these things. So long as you're in the frame of mind of recognizing the things, then this level of divinity is completely beyond your grasp. If you take yourself into a level of beyond all things, then suddenly this light becomes available. And we said this is called the Eish Yud. There's Ish and V'Isha. Ish is Ish Yud. Isha is Eish He. Ish is Eish Yud. Isha is Eish He. And these represents the two types of light. The infinite light and the light which is called light, and the light which is called darkness, which goes to enliven the worlds. And this light that you arrive at is called the Eish Yud. Okay, this is going to be probably a little bit over the heads of some people that just walked in, but nonetheless, we're in the middle of a deep topic over here. Stader. Okay, you with me? So far, more or less? Okay, let's move on. You gonna either open that book or pass it to me? You want to read it yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
I guess study about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe you guys can share because he doesn't have one over here.
Great.
I like to have safer in your hands.
Materials for.
There you go. Tzadi Gimel. Right here. All right. So we'll go from Tzadi Gimel, the second paragraph down. But all that we just described is. Okay, let me just do one more little preface. We said there's a difference between the love of the Srafim, of the angels, called the Srafim, who are in the world of Bria, versus the love of the soul and the Neshamas. And we said that our love is like infinitely beyond theirs, because even though they're burning towards Hashem continuously, and they're in a state of unbelievable ratzo, running towards connecting to their source, because they are in fact distant from their source, even in their love, there's a certain sense of self. Because they feel far, and therefore they're running close. Okay, they're continuously like burning up and running close to their source, but they themselves are outside of their source. Whereas we said the souls are already in Elokus, and we experience the type of experience that I just explained. In other words, a total negation of self. Not that we are an entity approaching God, but that God Himself like fills the whole place and there's nothing else. We reach this Eish Yud. But that, when we're saying that this is the quality of the love of the souls, that is only as the soul is in its source. As it is above, not necessarily that this is what's going on with a yid down here below when he comes into his body. Right? Like we say in the morning prayers, as we sort of chain down into this world to the point that you created me, you formed me, you blew the soul into this goof. So already coming down here, that's not the essence of the soul. It's only a little shine of the soul that comes into the body. So now our fire, in fact, is not really that Eish Yud. It's the Eish He. It's this feminine fire, the Isha. In other words, like the Srafim, similar to the Srafim, but we're going to say obviously it's different. The Hainu Bechinas Eish Haislavus Haba Agde Asagabis Bonus. Meaning to say what? This fire that we're able to attain in our bodies when we are in a restricted place, is a fire that is ignited through contemplation and meditation. And when we say meditation here, we don't necessarily mean sitting on the ground emptying your mind. We mean meditating by not only by davening either. It sort of precedes davening. It's a meditation of kind of what we're doing right now, constructing ideas. The word hisbonenus comes from the word to build, right? So you're building one idea upon another idea upon another idea until you have like a structure in your mind that you can actually see. It's like you're designing a blueprint of ideas, and then all of a sudden you design the blueprint, you can see the building. It's like, it ultimately leads to sort of a vision of the Eibishter. So it's a very active, constructive process, not like a sort of deconstructive process like other forms of meditation. But anyway, this is how you arrive at this fire of Hashem inside of your body. As we explained above. And here, the running that we experience towards God, it's kind of like what we just described about those srafim, that it's also felt. And we feel ourselves in the midst of loving God, because our love is based on something that's away from us and that we're trying to join. So there's a sense of self, whereas the previous Eish Yud that we described, the man love, we're talking about the source of the soul. This is completely, there is no you in that place, because this infinite level of God, which is beyond all worlds and beyond all things, sort of fills the place of you. And at that level, it's not felt. You don't have like a great experience. This is great. It's just the divine presence is inside of you. It's almost like the Mishkan. And the Mishkan, you go to see the Mishkan, God is in that place, which means the world is not exactly taking up that place anymore. So that can happen to that's how the soul essentially experiences God. But here we're talking about the soul, a ray of the soul in the body, where his longing is attached to his own feelings of self. Whereas it's like we said, the Eish of the fiery angels who are in Bria, they're in the created worlds, and they're longing for their source. And we have it even a little bit, let's say, worse than the Srafim, because we come all the way down into a physical body and into an enlivening soul, which enlivens our flesh. And when that happens, as we said earlier, our godly powers, they come into a physical form, which is really a crazy transformation. In other words, the spiritual entity, like let's say you can sort of see your soul from one end of the universe to the other. It's not constricted by any real physical vessels. It descends and becomes a physical entity. So now your eyesight is actually going through a physical piece of flesh.
Isn't that called like highlight?
Highlight? I never heard of highlight.
Highlight or strong light?
I'm not
highlight
sure.
is like when you can see without a horizon, and then the strong light is like heat vision, like when your sight can destroy physical things.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but it sounds interesting. But here I'm just saying that the soul above, it doesn't have a physical eye, but it sees, right? So what does it mean? It sees. It has like a spiritual eye. It has powers, but those powers are not restricted. How far can you see already? You can see, across the mountain. You can't see to Philadelphia from here. But if you had spiritual eyes, you could see from Philadelphia. You could see into many universes already, because there's nothing restricting and holding back your. And not only that, but the sight that you have, it's not invested into a physical object, right? So when the soul comes down into a physical body, it gets wrapped up into like a casing, which is now it materializes. And so this is an unbelievable descent. And he's just saying that therefore our love is nothing like what it is in its source. Yeah.
This idea of like reaching levels through Hasaga and Hitbonenut,
yes,
that we're doing a process of building.
Yes.
Aren't we just limited to just thinking about ideas that are in the physical?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying now. That's the problem. Is that, even our meditation, I was talking about our eyesight, but you can just say the same exact thing about mind and understanding. And that's a huge descent. Our whole understanding is like we have to think about cows and trucks, whereas
but the metaphor, it remains constant.
The metaphor remains constant. Yeah. But in other words, the only way to think about godly topics while we're in this world is through physical rocks and stones, literally. Like, what do we have?
Also worlds. Like, what are we thinking about when we're talking about worlds?
Exactly. Something which is not really what the world that we're talking about is.
Yeah.
But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that while it's a tremendous descent, so we're at a little bit of a disadvantage, to say the least, compared to where our soul is when it's not invested into a body. So our love, therefore, is limited. It's a felt love. In other words, because we feel far away. You with me there?
Yeah, but somehow being here is like the most tremendous thing.
Okay.
To reach something.
Why? Because while we're not able to experience the greatest revelation, but we are performing the mission of the king. So in other words, when you're fulfilling the will of God, you know, it's like a shliach. You know, a shliach goes out into some random town in the middle of the Northwest or the Midwest, and he's got like 6 guys who don't even care about Yiddishkeit. He can't live like a really spiritual life. Why is he going out there? Because that's the will of the Rebbe. It's the will of Hashem. They should go in Makar Bagid, far, far, far away. There's something like more geschmack about that. The Mesiras Nefesh and the self-sacrifice that he gives to Hashem for the sake of, you know, that's even more geschmack, that he's going to go live in Borough Park and be like with all kinds of furry hats all the time. You know what I'm saying? It's less revelation, but it's more connected to the essence. So there's something even greater about this lower love than there is about the higher love. Because ultimately that's our mission, is to be sent down here. Okay. Yeah, Kamosh Isbar La'el, as this was explained above, this idea about dressing up into physicality, transforming ourselves into something physical. So we actually wind up even at a lower place than the burning fire of the Srafim, because they're not dressed in a physical body. So even though they're not God, they're world, and they're burning towards achieving God, but since they haven't been put into a physical body, their ability to love is so much stronger. Their hisbonus, their meditation just like burns them up, like literally to the point that they're called Srafim. Right? So they're even higher than us as we come down into the body. So in our root, we're like infinitely higher than them. We said we're the Eish Yud. We're like the unfelt divine pleasure. But when we come down here, we wind up even being lower than the Eish Hey of the Srafim. You follow? Okay. Mikol
What
Makol.
happened to Vav through you?
Vav and Yud, you hold on to them for us. Put them in your pocket. No, it's just he's saying that there's the idea of Ish ve'isha, right? So there's man and woman. So inside of man and woman, you have Yud and you have two levels of fire. Each one of those words has the word Eish in it, but also the Ish has the Eish with a Yud, and the Isha has the Eish with a Hey. So we're saying there's like a sort of masculine and a feminine, a giver and receiver of these two loves. So they're both called fiery loves, but they're on totally different planes, to the point of like the difference between man and woman, giver and receiver. So we're just dealing with the Yud and the Hey right now. With Frat, we said that. Mekol makom odena b'koach yisod ha'esh denefesh ha'elokis lishlot al yisod ha'esh denefesh bahamis. Okay, so now, this is the good news. That while we're nonetheless limited in this very, very constricted level of love in a physical body, nevertheless, it's still within the power of the element of fire of our godly soul, which is inside of us, limited as it may be, to dominate over the element of fire of the animal soul. What's the element of fire of the animal soul responsible for?
Survival.
Once again?
Survival.
Pleasure.
We all said it.
All right, ready? Everyone, rock, paper, scissors. Someone who's a little bit has a taste for the Tanya there. What does it say regarding the fire, the element of fire? What is it responsible
Anger.
for? Anger.
Yes, anger.
Anger and sort of arrogance, right? Each of the 4 elements is on the side of the holiness, and it's also on the side of non-holiness, of klippa. So the 4 elements that we're all made out of, if it's fire, then it creates the aspect of anger and arrogance in a person. Water, for example, leads a person to pleasure. Earth inside is like our laziness and depression, and the wind, the air inside of us is our frivolity and lightheadedness. Those are on the negative side. So what we're saying is that the fire of Kedusha, the fire of our animal soul, which is basically, what is the fire? We said before, the fire is the hisbonenus. The fire is the meditation. Why? Because it's a type of, if you rank the elements there's 4 of them, you go from above to below, the order of them is Tzfat, Yerushalayim, air, fire, water, and earth. That's the order of them. Okay, so air is considered connected with the Yud of Hashem's name, right? You have Yud, K, Vav, K.
Relatable?
Earth is the lowest one.
Most relatable.
Relatable? I think basically the baseline of everyone is laziness. No, I'm just saying it's what I mean, most relatable. I don't know what you mean by most relatable. Maybe it depends. If you have a majority of earth energy in you, then it's most relatable. Some people have a majority of fire energy, so it's most relatable to them to be angry and arrogant. It depends, what your composition is. But
Never arrogant, that's what we consider proud.
yeah, that's true. The earth also has a certain level of humility. Anyway, going back to the point, you have Yud, K, Vav, K, right? So this is a little bit of like a gymnastics. You have to put the pieces together, right? Yud, K, Vav, K is God's name, but it's also associated with the 10 spheros. The 10 spheros are also associated with those 4 quadrants. So you have Chochmah, Bina, the Midos, and Malchus. You with me? So Yud is Chochmah, the Hey is Bina. We also said a second ago, the Yud is air, the Hey is fire. You with me on this one? So what I'm trying to get to is that the fire is Bina. The fire is the second stage down, which is Bina, which means meditation, because that's what alights you and sets you on fire. When you start to build this concept and think about it, your godly soul's fire starts to get going. So what we're saying here is that your godly soul's fire of meditation has intrinsically the power, it's very good to know this, because a lot of people don't know this in the world, that it has intrinsically the power to overcome the fire of your animal soul. In other words, your meditation and your ability to connect to Hashem is powerful enough to negate your anger and to negate your arrogance. It can, because it's imbued by God with this power. Which means it's able to remove the hotness in your heart for all the pleasures of the world and the delights of the fire, the natural fire of the animal soul. Right? There's a war going on. In other words, you have 2 completely different natures. And he's saying that you've been endowed with the ability to overcome the nature of your animal soul due to this fire of God. Despite the fact that this fire that we have, as we just laid out, is totally limited in compared to what it is in its source. It comes down level after level. It's even lower than the srafim by the time it comes to your body. Nevertheless, it's still endowed with the power to overcome the eish of the animal. Lios gover bo yesoda eish eloki, to dominate the element of the godly fire. Because this is in fact the whole reason why your soul was sent down to this world. It wasn't sent on the shlichus to fail. Like we just talked about the guy in the Midwest. The Rebbe, when he sent his shluchim, there's a lot of stories of other Chassiduses and other Rebbes. When they saw what the Rebbe was doing, like mamish conquering the world with Kedusha, they said to their Rebbe, send us also. Like we want to go. This is amazing. The Rebbe said, no way. I'm not taking that. The only person who can do that is someone who can take responsibility for such a thing. There's no way I'm sending you over there. You're gonna burn up. It's not so simple. Because the Rebbe endows the Chassidim, the Shluchim, with the powers to overcome it. Somehow it's like a magical, mystical relationship that if they're gonna do their job, they're gonna be safe. And the idea is to say, of course, that's just a metaphor for Hashem. He sends us into this world and puts us into a world which is Malei Klippas v'Rashoim Govrim Bo, as it says in the Tanya. It's filled with evil, and the wicked dominate over here. And here's little Yankala with his godly soul. It's empowered. It's set here to overcome this darkness, so it can.
That's why the angel said no way. Like, don't create man.
Yeah, because yeah. Man ultimately came up with the Psak Din. Would been better not to be created.
What?
Yeah, they voted on it in the Gemara. What are we gonna do though? Hashem had other plans.
Yeah. We're still here.
In other words, no, because it's the mission is intense. It's like you're being sent in, mamash, on like the craziest mission you could ever possibly imagine. But you're endowed with the powers to do it. Just look at the world. It's like one little yid against the whole world, basically. You know, it plays itself out every generation. What's the point of coming down here? You were sent down to this place because it's your job to actually fix the nefesh habahamis, to change the world. The world looks big, but the truth is the soul is bigger than the world and stronger than the world. The soul is look, it looks like the soul got kind of cramped into this one little. I'm talking about your soul, Rachamim. Your soul is bigger than the entire universe. Yeah. It actually is. It says that even one angel is a shlish, his size of an angel, he takes up the size of a third of the world. I don't know if it's Earth or probably like the universe, But the souls are bigger than that. In other words, the underlying power of the soul, all the worlds are actually just a small expression of what takes place in the soul. All these spheres, all these things, all these objects, which I'm talking about objects from Atzilus and down, infinite billions, they're all expressions of the actual Chelek Elokam Imal. They're expressions of God. And God in the Jewish soul is the same thing. So really, now when he creates all this manifold stuff, he then puts us into the stuff and he picks like one little tiny grain of sand and he sticks a piece of his soul inside of there. So from that perspective, it looks like the world is giant, billion times bigger than you, and how am I going to take over this thing? But your source of your soul is far-reaching, overpowering all of that is. And so that's what he's trying to say here. Where do you get the strength of a little Yankala inside of a little grain of sand to push it, turn over the whole darkness of the world? Is because the root of your soul is found inside of you, and it's bigger than the whole universe. It's more powerful than the whole universe. And if a little shine is even inside of you. So one man can sit in Brooklyn and turn over the whole world. He can sit in Tzfat and do the same thing. Good luck. This is your mission. Should you choose to accept it or not?
These glasses will explode in 30 seconds.
All right. So for this, the soul came down into the world. In order to fix the world. And certainly when it comes all the way down here, it's not stam. It has the power of its divine fire to overcome the animalistic fire. Even though the only fire that we have is a fire of the hay type, it's not a yud, that's our source. But while we're down here, our Eish Hay is even lower than the Srafim, as we said. Nonetheless, don't be fooled, as I just said. In its source, we really have an Eish Yud going for us. And the Eish Yud comes from the Orient Sof, which just not only dwarfs the worlds, it doesn't even recognize the worlds. It's so far beyond the worlds, it's not even there to shine up the worlds. It's just the worlds are just not existing at that level. And even though we're only an Eish Hay, we have access to our Eish Yud. In our meditation down here, we have the power of our source, even as we come down here. Again, let's use the mashal of the Shliach and the Rabbi, right? The Shliach's over there, he's supposed to use his actual seichel to get the job done. In other words, he's not supposed to go and shake a magic wand of Torah mitzvahs at the mayor, right? Or at the contractor, or at the teachers that work in his school. He has to learn how to all of a sudden be a contractor. He has to also learn how to be a politician. He has to all of a sudden learn how to be a marriage counselor. And he has to do it with his seichel. He has to go in there and actually, Jew by Jew, convert this town to a Hasidic town. He's not as good as the marriage counselor in marriage counseling. He's not as good as the contractor in contracting. This is what's the nimshal? Like the Srafim, the actual professionals in any of those trades, they're better than him. And he's supposed to use his little mind in order to accomplish things that there's much better people at it. So how's he going to succeed? Because as he's busy using his little human mind, he is at the end of the day connected to his source. So through the powers of his little meditation, like you said, all we can meditate on is rocks and stones and simple things. But if you'll do that, then your source becomes triggered, and inside of the kli that you make, all of a sudden, you're the best politician in town. The mayor's coming to your Hanukkah lighting party, and your building is the highest building in the city, and you got special permits that no one else can get, which you find is continuously happening by these little crazy shluchim everywhere. Because even though they're not as good as a politician as the politicians, they're not as good because when they try, the Eish Hey is a kli for the Eish Yud of the Rebbe. Shezeh inyan mashbin also, and that's what it means. Mashbino, so like it says in the Tanya, ti tzadik v'al ti rasha. Before you come into this world, you have to make an oath that you'll be a tzadik and not a rasha. And ki yedua, that the word shavua is the same root as the word soveya. Sheva, but Sheva is great also. Sheva, but soveya, right, which means to be saturated, full. And overfull. When someone's so very like, I'm full, I'm saturated. And the idea is satiated, but more than satiated, saturated. What's the difference? You have an overabundance of power that you are endowed with in order to come down here. If you're going to be a tzaddik, On one hand, they make you swear. But even if a person swears, you know what? We don't really swear too much anymore. Because it's such an intense thing to swear, use Hashem's name and everything. But if you swear, you are like, I'm not eating that. I swore I wouldn't eat that. It's like the intensity of an oath upon a person gives them an extra koach, you know? Like Pasha gives them an extra power. That's what we talk about. Hachlatas, we also sort of enter into that energy, not with a full-on oath. We always say bli neder. But like an oath really gives you a certain intense power. So the soul swears before it comes down in here into this world in order to endow it with this saturation of power that it has the ability to overcome anything. What does the swear give you? It gives you a little edge of the source of your neshama. A little piece of this infinite light which dwarfs all the worlds entirely, you take with you when you come down here. That's why you can have one man, Avram Avinu, can take on the whole world. Yidden do that periodically, right? And every one of us can do it. The bechinas naran de neshama kamoshi lamayla eino meirba mishorash makar neshama. And here's the idea, is that even above, you know, you have what's called a nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay, and yechida. You have sort of different parts of your soul. Nefesh, they all play different roles. Let's just take the two obvious ones, like the ruach and the neshama. It's like your emotional powers and your intellectual powers, right? Ruach, neshama. Just look at that for a second. So before your ruach and neshama come into your goof, and you wind up having physical emotions and physical intellect, you have spiritual emotions and spiritual intellect. Much like I said before about like the vision, you can see from here to Philadelphia, like it's much deeper emotions, much deeper intellect, because you haven't been condensed into a body yet. Nonetheless, your naran, that's an acronym for nefesh, ruach, and neshama of your soul as it is above, as great as it does not shine into it from its source. In other words, that level of the Eish Yud, which is the essence of God, basically, it does not shine into the neshama so long as the neshama is above. It doesn't have a reason to have access to such a power. This is what you were saying before. Someone mentioned a second ago, like that. Oh, it was you. That we come down here, even though it's so great up there, we come down here, Dafka, even though we're like shrouded in Gashmias. Here's why. Here's the good side of it. Only when you come down below, Dafka, nosnim ba mikoach shor shemakora. That's when you get this little edge, this little satiation. Because he's not going to send you down here to fail. So he gives you nuclear weapons, basically. And the nuclear weapon is the touch of your essential soul. So only by coming down into this world do you actually have access to your infinite levels of your soul, because you don't need them when you're above. So it's actually totally a yerida l'tzorach aliyah. It's a descent for the sake of an ascent. Because if you stick around in heaven where it's all shiny and good, you don't have the battle, you also will never be armed with the intensity of the power to overcome the battle, and therefore you basically lose out up there, as good as it is. The odzos, that's basically this is one of the most primary topics in a whole Chassidus, essentially, like understanding the preciousness. In a line in Chazal, it says, you know, Yafeh, Sha'achas b'tshuva ma'asim tovim ba'olam hazeh mikol chai olam haba. That line is sort of brought often in the Alter Rebbe in Chassidus. It's better one moment of tshuva and good deeds in this world than the whole life of the world to come. And he goes, how great is the whole life in the world to come, and how 1 minute over here is better than that. 1 second, right? Because here you are endowed with the essence of your soul, and there you're not. V'gam zos, v'od zos, shegam yiridas lamata harihi elokus be'etzem. Also, when you come down here, you're essentially elokus. You have an essential connection to elokus. What does it mean? The klalus tzir kuma the neshamos hu b'chinas elokus. In other words, don't think that just because your soul materialized, as we say, you know, it's brought also often, cheluk elokam imal mamish. What do those words mean? I'm doing a lot of talking over here. Maybe someone knows. What do the words mean? Cheluk elokam imal mamish.
Piece of God, literally.
Right, a piece of God, literally. But the word mamish can also mean
Very.
Nice. You know me too well, but I wasn't thinking that right this second. I should have been. But what does mamish mean in terms of the actual word mamash? Besides actually. That's right, mamashus. A mamashus is like an actual thing. Lemamesh, right? It comes into like you can touch it. So what is this? A whole other perush. that the soul is a chelek elokam mimal. It's a piece of the divine God, but mamash, it becomes a piece of flesh. So you might think that because my soul became a piece of flesh and invested itself into a physical body, it's not anymore elokus. It's not God anymore. It's creation. No, it's a chelok elokam mimal mamish. It just is a piece of God that became a physical piece of flesh. Touch a Jew. Go on, hug a Jew. It's like you're dealing with the Eibishter, mamish. God becomes a physical thing in a yid. He's a chelek elokam mimal, but mamash, he becomes a piece of flesh. So don't think that it's not elokus just because it crawls all the way down here. It's the whole tzir koma the neshamas. In other words, the tzir koma means from head to foot. Right? The whole soul is God. So whether it's the head and it's all juicy and having fun up in the spiritual realms, or it's the foot, it's still part of the person and it's a piece of God. Therefore, even our eish hey, we're so far away from God and we're descended into a physical body and we can meditate only about rocks and stones and try and find our way back. It contains in it the eish yud, because we're at the end of the day we're elokus. Imayos b'chinas murgash, even though it's felt. In other words, when we mean felt, it means we're yeshisdik. We love God and we feel ourselves when we're loving God, like the Srafim. And despite that, it's also elokus. Now that's a real doozy right there. Because what we're basically saying now, the difference was that when you're a saraf, or you're down here loving God, you are an entity which is other than God, and it's you loving Him. Right? And therefore, there's a certain element of feeling of self involved in it, for better or for worse. That's as good as we can do. And it's nothing like the Eish Yud, where the feeling of God is not you love Him, but it's that His love is taking you over and there is no you. And therefore, it's like non-felt by you. You're negated out of existence, and the place where you were is now His divine pleasure. So it's great, but you don't get to feel it. It's like, it reminds me of sort of the idea of like a Yid is compared to a flame. Ner Havayan Nishmas Adam, right? The candle of God is the soul of man. So why is it called the candle of God? Because it's burning all the time to get off the wick. It's like the fire is going up, trying to leave its connection to the world. It's like a Jew. The only thing is, what happens when you leave your connection to the wick? You disappear. What happens to fire when it jumps off the wick? So according to the science of the Tanya, it rejoins its Yesod Ha'esh Haruchani, right? The spiritual element of fire, which is under the moon. I don't really want to get into that right now. Just
radioactive sphere.
Forget all that for a second. What I'm trying to get at is like this. What happens to the fire when it jumps off the wick? It disappears. There's nothing left there. And yet this is the desire of every Yid. We so want God, we want God, to the point that if we actually get what we want, we disappear. But we don't care. God wanted it anyway. That's the craziness of a Jew. That's what nobody else really has. Those who also want to die for their cause, they want to die for their cause. We want to die for His cause. And when we do, we cease to exist, and we're like, sign me right up. Right? And that's a crazy quality. That's the Jewish quality. We're ready to not be. Because what happens when you are not, God is. He takes your place. Now, that being said, we're saying that we're not in a position to really do that. We're like a fire that can't get off the wick so long as we're in this world. Because we just can't come to such a level of bittul where we actually remove ourselves entirely, because we're even lower than the Srafim. We're encased in physicality. We just can't get out of it. And yet, partner this up with what we just said before, where you are a chelek elokam mimal mamish, you're a piece of God, so you already are the Eibishter in your place. In other words, you are Him. He's already filling your place, because you are essentially just a soul that came down here, but it's this weird combination. You're a piece of God that feels itself. The rest of, if in alternative, universe, when you're all the way up in your source, you're a piece of God because you don't feel yourself, because so He's there. Here there's a scenario where your Eish Hey, which is your meditation, and becomes a kli for Him filling you entirely, and they're both happening simultaneously.
Dude, doesn't everything have God in it?
Everything has God in it, but everything else has God in it in such a way where God is literally hiding himself from that entity. That's what makes the entity be there. Like if God was there, then nothing else would be in its place. So what God does is he hides himself from the entity, and then creation all of a sudden is there. The uniqueness about a Jew is that this is the point I'm trying to make. It's this fusion of these two things. He lets us be there, but he's also there at the same time.
What?
Yeah. It's like, let me give you an analogy for this, okay? When a person speaks, there's a whole process really going on deep inside, which is that your intellect is what's really first going on. You can't just speak. Speech it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's like compared to the moon. The moon shines light. The moon is not producing that light. So if it's coming out, you know there's a sun, because it's getting it from somewhere. Speech is the same way. Speech is not just like its own thing. It has a source. And that source has a source. And that source has a source. It's the whole process in order for you to actually speak. And it starts off with your intellect. And then your intellect basically sort of has to chill itself out, and you come up with an idea, but the intellect has to cease happening so that it can produce an emotion.
This isn't speech on the speech level, because you could read off a teleprompter, you can read from your notes, but you're not really thinking about it.
Even there, you're right. There's
There's a level of speech where you don't think of where you
but it's a very but that's unusual speech, right? That's like the Alter Rebbe says, when a person lets us say, Asher Yosher B'Secha so well,
right,
you can mamish like do your math homework while you're busy saying Asher Yosher B'Secha, and it doesn't contradict, because you're right. That's not real speech.
Homework, yeah.
That's not real speech. If you had math homework, but I'm talking about real normal speech, like people talking to each other, right? So your brain, in order for you to feel an emotion, you cannot simultaneously be in the state of like total meditation. You have to allow your meditation to sort of cease, and then all of a sudden it produces a feeling that came from that meditation. The same thing it comes when you want to then think thoughts like machshava. If you're intensely involved in your emotion, it's like it grips you to the point where you're just like frozen. You're crying, you're laughing, like you don't have control over your actual thought process. The letters do not really like come up to your mind, because there's such an intense level of like the light of the emotion. So that has to chill out, and then you can sort of reflect and come up with thoughts about what you were feeling. So at every stage there's the hiding of the source in order to create the presentation of the effect. And then you get to speech, it's the same thing. Your thought you're not getting the entirety of a person's thought when they speak to you. On the contrary, if you could, we could come in here, we could have like a 2-minute class, and everyone could go home. Why do I have to sit here and talk for an hour? It's because the things that I'm thinking, I cannot think them to you. I have to say them to you. And saying to you requires a lot more words, because the whole thought is not contained in one word. The whole thought may be contained in 1,000 words. And so there's a minimization of the higher level of the cause in order for the effect to come out. Now, where am I going with this? I'm trying to answer Akiva's very good question, which is that isn't everything God? What makes you so special, right? So the idea is that the way that the world comes into being is that for everything else except for a Yiddish and a Neshama, is that it's basically it's a reduction of the higher levels and the source. Every time it wants to produce a lower world, a lower level, then a higher state of divinity has to be withheld from it in order for that thing to come into its lowly existence. In order for a siyah to happen, the light of Yetzirah has to be completely removed from it in order to come out. And it's just a natural process. In order to bring something to revelation, you have to contract, right, the overwhelming concept so it doesn't disturb the revelation. Let's take another example. A teacher wants to teach something to a student. He has to teach him in a mashal instead of telling him the idea how it truly is, because if he tells it how it truly is, the student won't pick up anything. He won't grasp it. So you have to hold back, and bring out just the smallest part. So that's what creation is. It's literally God holding himself back and hiding inside of everything, so that, is it God? It is, but it's God in a way that he's not in that thing. He's holding himself back from being in that thing. What is a Yid? What is Torah and mitzvahs? It's this weird thing that doesn't make any sense. It defies the laws of nature. It's the idea of basically me coming to the class, forget about just thinking the idea and it goes into your minds. I will just feel something and I will just distribute that feeling into each of your hearts so we can all go home. And we're totally enlightened with the idea of what was going on because I can express that which cannot be expressed. Normally, in order to express a feeling, it has to go through a whole bunch of hishtalshlus and come down to thought and then speech. Right? Because that's the natural way. If I want to express and reveal something, I have to hold back the higher elements which don't allow it to come out. But with Yid and Torah mitzvahs, he's able to express that which cannot be expressed. So the Yud of Hashem comes into our body while we're busy being a created entity. We come to an expression. We're a finite being. And yet all the infinite powers of God, which essentially cannot come into expression because they're too high to be expressed, they nonetheless come and get expressed. It doesn't matter. He can do whatever he wants. He just brings forth the unexpressible and expresses it. So that's the difference, basically. That's what everything is God, but we're God in a totally different way. We're like a totally different power of God that he can express the unexpressible. That was a lot of words for the concept there, but you following me on this one?
You're saying for
What's it?
You're saying that's for Yidden?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what we're saying here, is that while at the end of the day all you have is like your limited human mind, how are you able to overcome all the darkness of the world? Because at the same time, you're a Yud, Eish. You're an Eish Yud. It's not lost on you. Even though the Eish Yud, the way it expressed itself in a Yid when he's in his body, is only as an Eish Hey.
So,
but you're like we said, it's like the man is from head to foot. Even the foot is Elokus. So the foot, which is that which feels himself, but he's also mamish one with God at the same time.
so why can't we see this like physically? I mean, we can see the result of it sometimes.
Then you wouldn't work for it.
If you're looking for it.
You can see the result of it big time, Beryl. The Yid is a supernatural entity. Every Yid in his own realm, and the Am Yisrael. And you can see that we just don't make sense to anybody or anything in this world. We defy the laws of nature. Everything's miraculous by us. It's like we never win a war. We have God win our wars. If we're going to win a war, which we always do, it's because we were the underdog who could never do it, and somehow, some way, they forgot this and da-da-da, and we win the war. It's like, it's only miraculous. We don't work normally.
Yeah. And we don't see it, but you don't actually see it. Like,
Because he did put us in a natural world, and so therefore it's like the idea is we have to overcome through the Eish Hey, through meditation, think it through, right? Yeah, we look natural, feels natural. But if you would think it through, which is the idea of igniting the fire of meditation in your mind and think about it for a second and own it, then you realize that it's not natural, and that's the koach that gives you the ability to overcome anything.
So we have to see.
So that's what I'm saying. The meditation of the Eish Hey leads to attaching yourself to the source of the Eish Yud. Any questions?
What is God?
All right
Do you
then.
have a patent on that technology?
Did we establish that already?
What's that?
Did we establish that we're God?
Yeah, don't tell anybody that.
Do we have a patent on that technology where you have the feeling and you kind of distribute it to a group?
We will. That's what you guys are for.
You should patent that.
You guys who are not in yeshiva, that's what you should be busy doing. You know, we got our job. You got your job.
We're organizing a workforce.